This podcast is brought to you by the American Enterprise Institute.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, review, and share.
Thanks for listening. Here's our show.
What in the hell's going on?
What the hell is going on?
What the hell is going on?
I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
You don't have to know what the hell is on it.
What the hell's the matter with these guys?
We don't know what's going on.
What the hell's going on?
Who in God's name knows what it's all about?
Hi, I'm Danielle Pletka.
And I'm Marc Thiessen.
Welcome to our podcast. What the hell is going on?
What the hell is going on is Donald Trump has won in a landslide. He not only won an electoral college landslide, he won a popular vote landslide. I mean, this was a decisive, complete, and total victory. And it was historic. As I said on Fox last night, the last president and only other president to do what he did was Grover Cleveland in 1892. In 1888, Grover Cleveland lost the White House to Benjamin Harrison, and 4 years later came back to beat Benjamin Harrison and take it back. The only other president ever to accomplish that feat. So I said that Donald Trump is not only a once-in-a-generation political talent, he's a once-in-a-century political talent. I mean, that is just a stunning, decisive win. And whether you love him or you hate him or somewhere in between, you have to give kudos and credit to what he accomplished last night. It is just a remarkable feat.
It is, and we did a little special interview with Matt Continetti for the Substack, and he was talking about just the sort of overwhelming quality of this, you know, with a crossover from voters, black male voters, 25%, Latinos, taking him over the top. The one that Matt talked about, but the one that I selfishly watched, you and I both live in the state of Virginia. You know, Virginia is not a purple state. When I moved here, it was a purple state. Now, Virginia is a blue
When we moved
state.
there, it was a red state.
Yeah, and now it is a blue state. And the numbers in Virginia were just devastating. Kamala Harris won in Virginia by about 4.5 points. Now, that is not where you want to be. He also talked about New Jersey, and New Jersey was, again, she won by 5 points, 4.9 points in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Even in New York, she won by 11 points.
But she won because of Manhattan. If you look at, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look at the outer boroughs, Trump won the Bronx by 21 points. He won
crazy.
He won Staten Island. He was like it was the real New Yorkers voted for him. And then I'll tell you, a lot of New Yorkers voted for him in Florida because they've been fleeing this place. I'm in New York right now, recovering from my 3 a.m. sign off at Fox News last night. And a lot of people left this city and moved to Florida and moved to North Carolina and moved to Georgia and moved to Texas. And they voted for Donald Trump in droves as well.
No, I know. Listen, everybody who listens to us knows exactly how I feel about Donald Trump. But I have to say, it's an extraordinary victory. And it is, it's for me, seeing the coalition that he's built, I think this is just a huge triumph for the America that actually we believe in, which is an America that people come to be Americans. When I see how he did with the Hispanic vote, it warms my heart. I said that on Meet the Press when we were talking about that Telemundo poll, you remember?
And I do.
It warms my heart to see that people are rejecting the identity politics that has become the hallmark of the Democratic Party and are saying, no, you know what? I vote like other Americans. I don't care whether my last name is Diaz or Rodriguez or anything else. I am somebody who sees my commonality with other people. I'm not voting on highfalutin New York Times dictated policies. I'm voting on the issues that affect me: inflation, education, crime, immigration, those things. I love that.
I agree with you. I mean, well, I think we can delve into the various reasons for why this happened, but I will tell you before we do that that one of the things, and sitting in the Fox Green Room last night, that before all the vote counts started coming in, both the Democrats and Republicans were all saying, "Well, you know what? I'll tell you the one thing I'm hoping for is a decisive victory," because they were hoping their candidate would win decisively, but we're not going to have anybody questioning the results. We're not going to have legal challenges. Our legal the legal eagles in the room, like Andy McCarthy and Jonathan Turley, were the only ones who didn't end up going on the air because they didn't have any legal reporting to deal with, and that's a good thing for the country that the victory was decisive. But now we got to see, are the Democrats going to accept this? You know, if I remember, I have a column up. I wrote it in advance of the election in case Trump won. But you know, in 2016 the response to his victory was, first of
Resistance.
all, violence, resistance. I mean, they were setting on his inauguration, they set limousines on fire and broke windows in D.C. They had the Women's March with you remember I won't call them what they were, but those hats, those
Yes.
pink hats that everybody was wearing. And the cry went up, not my president. Well, guess what? He was your president because the American people elected him. And I wrote a column in 4 years later when Biden won, decrying that. And the title of my column is "Joe Biden is my president," because he was elected by the American people. I didn't vote for him. I disagree with him. I suspected that I would disagree with a lot of what he did, and I was right. But he was my president. And we should all hope that whoever is elected president, we should give them a chance to succeed and hope that they do succeed, because if the president succeeds, the country succeeds. And so, now, Donald Trump is president, and whatever your party is, whatever your position is, we should all hope that he succeeds, and we should also help him to succeed and try and give him the best advice and encourage him to do good things for the country. And it'll be fascinating to see, because this was so decisive, whether the resistance starts up again or whether the Democrats come around. Because he campaigned on a lot of heterodox stuff that is not traditionally conservative. He campaigned on tariffs, and he campaigned on protecting entitlements, and he campaigned on a whole host of things that liberals could, if it wasn't Donald Trump saying it, liberals would have embraced. And so, are they going to work with him on those things? Or are they going to go into resistance mode? And it'll be fascinating to watch.
It will be. One of the things that Matt said, which I really agree with, and you and I wrote this, is if Biden wants to be, if he wants to start the country off on a fresh page with the inauguration of Donald Trump, what he should do is pardon Trump. He should fire
I
Jack
agree
Smith.
100%.
And I really agree with that. I mean, again, it would be the kind of gracious thing that isn't the hallmark of this president, but the Democrats need to wake up and smell the coffee. I want two healthy parties in America. I want a real race. I want Democrats to do well, just as you said, as I want Republicans to do well, because I care more about the country than I do about the partisan affiliation of people. And if you want Donald Trump to succeed, the right message for Biden and poor Kamala Harris to send is, we lost, we hear you, we understand, lawfare's failed, let's do the right thing and pardon the president of the United States and let him start fresh. This is what Gerald Ford did with Richard Nixon. It was smart.
I agree with that. And you'd also probably give him, in a little self interest, give him cover to also pardon his son while he was doing it as well. But yes, 100% he should pardon him. And it would be, Joe Biden, his entire presidency was built on a lie, which was he said in his inaugural speech that he would put his whole soul into uniting the country. And
No,
he
that was a lie.
actually managed to be a more divisive figure than even Donald Trump was in his first term. I mean, this is a man who gave a speech in Atlanta saying that Republicans who wouldn't go along with the federal takeover of our elections compared them to racists and segregationists and Confederates. He said they were standing with Bull Connor and Jefferson Davis. and said that they called them enemies of the country, saying that he would defend our democracy against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I mean, that was one of the most venomous things that an American president has ever said. And it was about them standing against a partisan bill, a partisan election bill. And then just a week ago, right before the election, he said Trump supporters are garbage. And I'm sorry, there was no apostrophe after that. That was the
Oh, no,
biggest
of course
load of
not.
crap I'd ever heard in my life. He was an incredibly divisive president. He could end his presidency by fulfilling his inaugural promise, by doing what you suggest, by what we suggested in that
No, I
column.
know.
And I
He
wish he would do it.
absolutely I wish he would I wish he would do it too. I'm just seeing Mike Lawler won his New York swing state. He's one of the
Yay.
great, terrific, pro-Israel, bipartisan Republican members from New York, and I think the House is going to clearly also be Republican. Okay, let's talk foreign policy for a second. It's
Well,
gonna
first, before we talk foreign policy,
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about why this happened. Because I think the Democrats, it is time for a little soul searching on the part of the Democratic Party. Because if you didn't want a second Trump presidency, maybe you shouldn't have unleashed the worst border crisis in American history. The Democrats knew that Donald Trump won the 2016 election on illegal immigration. And knowing that, as soon as they took power, in 2020, the first thing they did was lift all of the common sense policies that Donald Trump had put in place in the border simply because he did them, and unleashed an unprecedented border crisis that has cost the New York Post actually added up all of the costs for 2023 alone, $150 billion in taxpayer funds at the federal, state, and local level, inundating communities across this country, which were forced to cut police and fire and other services for American citizens in order to take care of illegal migrants. I'm here in Times Square at my hotel. You go around the corner there's a hotel around the corner, a block and a half away, which is filled with illegal migrants. And I swear to you, on the street are homeless veterans outside, in Times Square, and around the corner are illegal migrants whose hotels and meals are being paid for by the taxpayers of this city. If you knew that, why on earth would you unleash this kind of border crisis and then let it go record after record after record for 3 years?
Look, it's crazy, but I said this to Matt, when you have contempt for your voters, when you have contempt for all but the most elite, wealthy, educated of your constituents, this is how you lose touch. And
Yeah.
look, I will say this. Mark knows all too well, since 1996, we've had an election party with our friends and family and everybody else we know, apparently. And as a result, Stephen went to the supermarket. Stephen hardly ever goes to the supermarket. And he came home and he said, "Oh my God, do you know how much this was?" And he holds up a single bag. And I said, $55? And he goes, "Nope, 60." It is so expensive for normal people who are going to their local Piggly Wiggly, Food Lion, Safeway, Giant, whatever it is. And the Joe Bidens and Kamala Harrises and the college presidents and the union presidents and the Hollywood honchos and the Beyoncés and the Taylors, they don't go to the supermarket.
They have people for that.
They have people for that. And I'll say exactly what I always say when I use this expression. I freaking hate this expression, especially because Meghan Markle uses it so much and I can't stand her. But people's lived experience matters. If
Amen.
you have contempt for the concerns of people who have, in a city of 5,000 people, have 5,000 refugees, I don't care whether they're legal or illegal, that's not the way to manage. It's just not. You cannot say you're unhappy because you're a racist. You're unhappy because you're a bigot. The answer is, I'm unhappy because this is my town and we can't manage our services and we can't manage our schools. These are real concerns that people have, and it's not because they hate migrants. It's because they are having a hard time managing their lives. What has happened to the Democratic Party?
Well, this is if you want to understand this election in a twin pair of statistics, over 4 years, the American people under Biden and Harris's watch went from the highest level of personal savings ever recorded, thanks to the pandemic lockdowns and the pandemic aid, to the highest level of personal debt and the highest level of credit card debt ever recorded. So if you're a working class American, you went, when Biden came in office, from having your savings account flush with money to spending that all down in order to keep up with inflation, to then racking up and maxing out your credit cards in order to pay for those groceries you were just talking about. A $100 basket of groceries costs $125 today, and 60% of Americans are using credit card debt and payday loans in order to pay for their groceries. And 4 in 10 Americans have had to pay a late fee because they couldn't pay their credit cards on time. I mean, if you want to understand, and then the Democrats go out and say the economy is getting better. Bidenomics is all. Remember the Bidenomics thing? We're going to campaign on Bidenomics, and well, inflation is lower and it's going down, and the stock market is doing great. And people are looking at them like they're crazy because they've maxed out their credit cards to be able to pay for food for their kids, you know? And don't forget, the reason why this inflation was unleashed was because of the American Rescue Plan. They injected $1.9 trillion into the economy at a time when we had already started the recovery from the pandemic, but Joe Biden wanted credit for the recovery. He had to do something big. And Larry Summers cautioned that if you do this, you're going to set off, this is a quote, set off inflationary pressures we have not seen in a generation. Jason Furman, our friend who comes to the World Forum every year, Obama's top economic advisor, said pouring $500 billion of gasoline on the inflationary fire that's already burning is reckless. And they didn't listen to their own liberal economists who said, don't pass this bill, don't pour spending on this economy right now, or you're going to unleash inflation. And Kamala Harris was the deciding vote for it. Joe Biden did it. And then they wonder why the American people threw them out.
Yeah. No, listen, Mark, you are spot on. I love the headline for Brett Stevens' piece and Brett Stevens, who voted for Kamala Harris, but the conservative writer in the New York Times editorial page. The headline is, "A party of prigs and pontificators suffers a humiliating defeat." That's it. Look, I'm not your average citizen. I'm not your average person. Yeah, I have a nice house. I have a great job. I live in Washington, D.C., one of the least normal places in the country. But look, I'm not a man of the people. I'm not a man at all. But I read
But you
Rudy
could be.
Fisher. I could be. But I read what people who want the Democratic Party to win are saying. And it's not. You should have more all gender bathrooms. You should do more surgery on teens who think that they're boys, girls, cats, whatever the hell. I'm listening and thinking, no, perhaps more anti Semitism isn't the idea. All of this is a triumph of cultural insensitivity, of absolute adamant arrogance on the part of the Democratic Party. But now I want to talk about foreign policy, because if Joe Biden's term went south when he pulled out of Afghanistan, which it did, okay, that was a turning point for him. And he never recovered from it, as he never should have, because it is a stain on his name. What's Donald Trump going to do on foreign policy, do you think?
Well, first of all, let's talk about foreign policy in the context of why the Democrats lost. You're exactly right. The Afghan withdrawal was the tipping point. Joe Biden had never been, his approval had never been below 50% before the Afghan withdrawal. After the withdrawal, it dropped below 50 and never recovered.
That's right.
And it also, keep in mind, it sent a message of weakness that emboldened Russia to invade Ukraine, that emboldened Iran and Hamas to attack Israel. And so we went from the relative peace of the Trump era, the first Trump era, to wars on two continents and America flailing in the Middle East while Houthi rebels were firing missiles at American forces across the Red Sea and Iraq and Syria with impunity. I
Yep.
mean, with the fecklessness and weakness that this administration imposed on the world stage. So what you had was a perfect storm of chaos at home and abroad. that the American people looked at that, and then you had the cover up of Joe Biden's senility, which offended Americans that they had been lied to. And then they replaced him with his own vice president who had co-ownership of all these disasters and tried to present her as an agent of change. You know, we need to turn the page. We need a new way forward. You know, in America, only one sitting vice president in 188 years has won the presidency. And that was George H.W. Bush in 88 because people wanted another Reagan term. Nobody wanted another Biden term, or else Biden would have still been the nominee. So you replace him with his vice president, and you think that Americans are stupid enough to say that she's going to be an agent of change? They elected a real agent of change. And to get back to your question, you're right. He's going to be an agent of change when it comes to foreign policy, too.
Right. So I believe that Donald Trump can restore deterrence. I believe that Donald Trump can put the Iranians in their place, put the Houthis in their place. I believe that Donald Trump, who the Chinese work desperately to derail, can in fact cause the Chinese to rethink their aggressive expansionist plans. I am most worried about Ukraine, and I am really hopeful that he will use his really excellent market smarts, because he has a feral sense for things, right? I'm really hopeful that he is going to give an ultimatum to Putin, right? You need to pull out. And then all of the punishments that are in place will go away. You need to pull out. You need to forget about this. You're losing 10,000 guys, a week. And for your future, you need to do this. And he can do that from a position of strength. I just worry he's just going to cede territory. What do you think?
So I think that is a credible argument to make to Donald Trump, and I think that I'd like him to see Ukraine through the prism of ISIS, right? So he says that the Ukraine war would have never happened if he had been president, and he's right. And he inherited it from an incompetent Democratic president, just like he inherited the ISIS caliphate from an incompetent Democratic president. And he turned around and unleashed, in that case, the U.S. military and wrapped up ISIS in pretty quick order and drove them out of their caliphate. And I think that I hope that he will see, in this case, you don't have to use American troops, but I hope that he'll see that there's an opportunity to undo the damage that Biden did in Ukraine by allowing this thing to happen. I don't know how it's going to play out. I think that the Ukrainians are going to have to, yes, I hope he forces Putin to make some tough choices, but the Ukrainians are also going to have to make some tough choices because they're not going to get everything they want. I think it's a fantasy to think that they're going to go back to the borders pre-Biden invasion. I think that, and if you look at history, I mean, Germany was divided for a long time. Korea is still divided. There's most wars that should have never happened end with some sort of imperfect peace. And the goal has to be to create conditions where stable peace that will outlast Trump's presidency can be achieved, and that there won't be another invasion of Ukraine after this. So it has to be whatever the lines are. I don't know what they're going to be, but they have to be defensible lines that cannot be crossed again. And I think that that is important because Trump's legacy depends on it being something that lasts, just like the Abraham Accords are going to be something that lasts. I think he wants to broker a peace that is going to outlast his presidency so that America doesn't have to do this again in terms of helping Ukraine defend itself. And I think AEI can help him come. I think AEI can play a real critical role in helping him come up with that plan.
I agree with you. The one thing I want to be sure of is that he doesn't make the mistake through ideology that Joe Biden made in Afghanistan. If you are led by blind ideology, and that was really what Joe Biden was led by, then you make mistakes that can be fatal to your success and fatal to your deterrence. And so that is the prism through which he needs to see this. And I agree with you. I think he listens to you and respects you. I think we can make an argument for an America in the world that is strong, a better military, more resources. I hope that's the Donald Trump that's going to govern. I don't think Donald Trump has anything left to prove to America. I think he won fair, square, and big with an absolutely important multi-generational, multicultural, multi-ethnic coalition. He doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. He can now afford to do the right thing and lead. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I just hope he picks really good people. I hope he's not governed by spite. I hope he's not governed by people I don't like. You know who I mean. And I hope he's a smashing success, because that's that's the kind of thing he should take with him for after this election.
Yeah. Well, one thing we do know is that unlike certain unnamed people, he doesn't hate Ukraine and he doesn't hate Zelensky like some on the anti-Ukraine right do. He actually loves Zelensky and credits him with saving him in his impeachment, in the first impeachment case. And, when he had that meeting with Zelensky at Trump Tower, he said he was like a piece of steel. He stood by me, So now we need Donald Trump to be like a piece of steel and stand by Zelensky. And I,
Well,
and I
well
think
put.
and I think he can do it. I think he can do it, and we can come up with a way. His number one concern is protecting the American taxpayer. And so, look, we've given Ukraine a lot of money and a lot of weapons, and it was necessary. It shouldn't have been necessary because the war should have never happened, but it was necessary once the war did happen. But now we got to find a way to help Ukraine while protecting the American taxpayer, because
I
we've
love
we've
the
given it
idea of
we've
getting
given it
Putin
the
to pay
office.
for it.
We've done it. But even if there's a peace deal, there's going to have to be a way to arm Ukraine, because Ukraine is going to have to defend its peace and deter aggression. So the cause of arming Ukraine, even if the war stops tomorrow, the cause of arming Ukraine is not going to be over. But we got to find a way to do it where it's not the American taxpayers that are paying for it. We can use the Russian assets that have been seized in Europe. There's $300 billion there. And, I think a perfect scenario, I can't think of a more perfect scenario than Vladimir Putin paying for weapons for Ukraine to deter Russia, and all that $300 billion going to America, because the Ukrainians will use that $300 billion to buy weapons from us and create jobs here at home, strengthen our defense, modernize our military by allowing us to strengthen the defense industrial base, and not a penny of that has to be taxpayer money to do that. I also think the Ukrainians have a huge amount of untapped natural resources that they can use to give America preferential access to that, American companies to come in and invest and exploit that in exchange as collateral for loans for weapons. There's a lot of creative ways we can do this. Even if Donald Trump succeeds in ending the war quickly, we're still going to need to arm Ukraine, and we need to do it and allow the Ukrainians to buy those weapons using Russian money and Ukrainian natural resources as the way to do it, because that's good for America. JD Vance comes from Ohio, which has the only in Lima, Ohio, has the only U.S. tank factory that makes Abrams tanks. And Barack Obama was going to close that factory. And the way they saved it, Senator Rob Portman saved it, was by turning it into a factory that we used for foreign military sales. It was foreign military sales that saved the Lima tank plant. And why can't Ukraine be part of those foreign military sales? It doesn't have to be taxpayer funded. It can be funded by Putin, and it can be funded by Ukraine's vast untapped mineral and natural gas wealth. And that could also create investment opportunities for America. So there's a way to do this that not only protects the American taxpayer, but is actually a windfall for the American taxpayer. So we got to come up with a plan to do it, and I think we can.
I think we can too, and I think that that's an important priority. I think Trump has been given a huge opportunity to do really good things with the House, the Senate, and the White House. And what I really hope is that he uses that opportunity, not as Barack Obama did when he had 59 senators, and used it to stuff down the throats of the American people progressive statist ideas that didn't do anybody any good. What we need is someone who wants to use that power and use that ability to do really good things to lighten the tax burden, to ensure that people have access to the things that they need so that we are not paying off people's medical degrees with their janitor's income. All of those things are
Drill, baby,
hugely
drill.
and drill, baby, drill. Right, because if we do that, although Joe Biden has not been as bad on that as many have said, if we do that, he hasn't. He's actually been
Well,
pretty good on some of that
we can
stuff.
talk about that. No,
But
that's another conversation.
what I want is for us to do well enough that we are not supporting Russians selling oil at concessional prices to the Chinese.
And we have a ban on foreign sales of liquid natural gas right now under Biden, which is crazy because we should be selling them to Europe so that they don't need Russian liquid
Bingo.
natural gas.
There's a lot to do, and we're
There's
going
a
to keep
lot of
talking.
insanity to reverse.
There's a lot to do. We're going to keep talking. Kamala Harris has not yet conceded, which
Yep.
I'm very, very eager to hear.
I spoke to Trump yesterday at 3:30 in the morning. He called me after his victory speech, and I asked him, "Has she called you to concede?" Because I watched the speech, and normally, the winning candidate says, "I just received a call from my opponent who called to congratulate me, and I congratulated her on a well-fought campaign, and we're going to unite the country and move together." And he didn't say any of that. And so I asked him, "Did she call you?" And he's like, "Nope." So and this is not even close. This is decisive.
Popular vote, for God's
Yeah.
sake. Yeah,
Yep.
but you know what? Look, no class is no class. And when he didn't go to Joe Biden's inauguration, I thought that was offensive to the country, offensive to the process. Kamala Harris, who, of course, was brought to power as the Democratic candidate through an undemocratic process, needs to do the right thing.
And also, if you're going to hold yourself up as the defender of democracy and the defender of democratic norms, against Donald, who you criticize for doing that, then you better live by the norms yourself. It's not to say, well, he didn't do it. Okay, well, I thought you said you were better than him. So, do that. And the other thing before we go, last point, Democrats are going to learn to love the filibuster again.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Thank God. And thank God for that. Because one thing Republicans know, what goes around comes around. By the way,
Amen.
just seeing it, Kamala's going to give a speech at 6 p.m. Seriously. Honestly. Lady.
What the fact that she didn't concede last night
Is
and come out and
disgraceful.
say is disgraceful. She knew. So early on, when Cedric Richmond came out and said she's not going to be speaking tonight, there was still a pathway for her to win if she won the blue wall. If she had won the three blue wall states in that, and then not a half hour later, they called Wisconsin, and there was no pathway to go. At that point, you come out and you call your opponent, you congratulate him, and you come out and concede the election. Because usually the one side concedes before the other side comes out to give their victory speech. And she just went to bed. And that's pretty much a metaphor for her political career. Because Kamala is gonna be, her new job is gonna be Mamala. Because she's not gonna be in public life anymore.
Well.
Remember the great scene in The Naked Gun 2.5 when Frank Drebin is sitting in the blues bar drinking his sorrows away, and the woman is and the blues singer is singing about suicide, and they pan across the scene of people drinking their sorrows away in the bar, and behind one is a picture of the painting of the Titanic, then a picture of the Hindenburg, then a picture of some other disaster, the Chicago fire, and then a picture of Michael Dukakis. She is the new Michael Dukakis.
Poor woman.
God bless her.
Put a twit in a job meant for a serious individual, and this is
Amen.
what you end up with. Guys, thank you for being with us. There's going to be lots to talk about, lots of what the hell over the coming months, and we're going to be here the entire time. Thank you, and thanks, Marc, for all the hard work you did on TV yesterday while I was busy swilling vast quantities of wine. With your wife, I should add. Loved every minute.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. You can get in touch with the show by emailing us at whatthehell@aei.org.
Or you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at @dpletka.
And I'm at Marc Thiessen. That's Marc with a C.
Please rate and review the podcast. If you like the show, please subscribe, share it, comment on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this.
Thanks for listening.